If you have ever searched for the scariest haunted house in America, one name almost always appears: McKamey Manor. It is described as an extreme haunted attraction, sometimes even a survival-style challenge, and it has become internet folklore for a few reasons people repeat over and over. But the real story is not just about fear, it is about the man behind the operation, how the experience is structured, how the legend was built online, and why it escalated into mainstream controversy and official scrutiny. To understand McKamey Manor, you have to start with its creator, Russ McKamey. In profiles and documentaries, he is often described as a Navy veteran who became a major figure in a niche subculture sometimes called extreme haunts. McKamey Manor built its reputation on something different. The pitch was not just that it was scary, the pitch was that it was intense, personal, and unpredictable. It was presented as something you volunteered for, something you chose because you wanted to be pushed beyond what a normal haunted attraction would ever attempt. And that framing matters, because it sits at the heart of the debate that has followed McKamey Manor for years. Supporters say it is consenting adults signing up for an extreme experience. Critics argue that consent is not meaningful if the participant is pressured, overwhelmed, or unable to stop on their own terms once it begins. Long before this became a national argument, it started as a local phenomenon. Accounts trace McKamey Manor back to earlier versions of a home haunt, before it grew into something far more controlled and infamous. Over time, it developed a reputation that spread online, helped by word of mouth, reaction videos, and a constant sense of mystery. People did not just ask, "Is it scary?" People asked, "Is it real? Is it legal? And what is actually happening inside?" As the reputation grew, the manor became less of a haunted house and more of a myth. The kind of story the internet loves because it sits right at the edge of what people can believe. McKamey Manor has been described as requiring participants to meet strict conditions before they are even allowed to try. Reporting and official materials have described requirements like age limits, medical clearance, proof of health insurance, and background checks. There is also the waiver, frequently described as extremely long, with additional acknowledgments and a broader screening process. This is not presented like buying a ticket at a seasonal attraction. It is presented like applying for a challenge. That structure is one reason the story is so polarizing. To some people, it looks like responsibility, a filter designed to keep out anyone who might be at risk. To others, it looks like control, a system designed to select participants who can be pressured and managed while building layers of documentation that discourage complaints. Another detail adds to the mystique. Multiple reports have described the so-called entry fee not as a standard ticket price, but as a donated item, commonly described as a bag of dog food. It is a small detail, but it plays into the brand. The idea that this is not a business in the usual sense, not a haunted house that sells tickets, but something different, something underground, something that exists outside the normal rules. Then there is the prize narrative. For years, McKamey Manor has been associated with a cash prize claim, often described as $20,000 for anyone who completes the experience. Alongside that is the claim that nobody has ever won. Those two claims together are a perfect engine for internet obsession. If there is a prize and no winners, people assume it must be impossible. If it is impossible, people watch and share clips. If people watch and share, the legend grows. But journalists and critics have questioned the prize concept and the terms, arguing that the rules allow the operator to disqualify participants at will, or that the finish line is not clearly defined in a way that makes completion realistic. Whether you see that as showmanship or a red flag depends on what you believe the manor truly is. Because at its core, this is the question: is McKamey Manor a performance, or is it something else? As attention increased, the manor became a subject in the broader conversation about extreme haunted attractions. Documentaries exploring the haunt subculture highlighted it as one of the most notorious examples. Long-form reporting emphasized that it was not a typical haunted house experience, and that participants reported extreme physical and mental stress. This is also where the public split hardened. One side argues that adults can choose what they do. They sign paperwork. They go through screening. They can refuse to participate. The other side argues that the nature of the experience makes those choices murky once it begins. That pressure, exhaustion, confusion, and fear can undermine a person's ability to withdraw freely, even if they technically agreed on paper. Over time, the operation also changed locations. Reporting and timelines have described the manor as originating in the San Diego area, with later relocation to Tennessee, and references to related activity in Alabama during parts of its history. By the time it was in Tennessee, the controversy was no longer local, it was national. And the internet was no longer just watching. People were organizing. Petitions calling for McKamey Manor to be shut down gained traction and spread widely. Critics used language that framed it not as a haunted attraction, but as something closer to harm. Supporters pushed back, calling it an exaggerated story driven by viral clips and rumors. But petitions do one thing very well. They turn online outrage into real-world pressure, and eventually that pressure collided with mainstream media again in a major way. In October 2023, Hulu released a documentary titled Monster Inside: America's Most Extreme Haunted House. The documentary helped reignite widespread attention, and it also brought the story into a more formal arena, where claims are not just debated in comment sections, but examined by institutions that can demand information and records. According to court records, Russ McKamey received a letter from the Tennessee Attorney General's office in late October 2023. The letter referenced the documentary, expressed concerns about alleged practices, and indicated that a formal request for information and documents would follow. After that, McKamey sued Tennessee officials connected to the investigation, arguing that the state's actions violated his rights. This is where the story becomes more than folklore. It becomes a dispute with paper trails, filings, and legal arguments. Here is what is broadly documented across reporting and official materials. McKamey Manor has been marketed as an extreme experience with strict requirements and a lengthy waiver. It has been the subject of serious controversy for years, including petitions and major media coverage. And in late 2023, the Tennessee Attorney General's office opened an investigation into concerns tied to its operations, followed by legal action from McKamey challenging that scrutiny. Here is what remains disputed: the most serious claims about what participants endure, how the experience is conducted, whether stopping is honored in practice, and whether the operation is fundamentally entertainment or exploitation. Those claims exist in participant accounts, documentaries, and reporting, but the details vary depending on who is speaking and when. So, what is the bigger theme? McKamey Manor sits at an uncomfortable intersection of entertainment, consent, and control. It is easy to say, adults signed up, so what is the problem? But the harder questions are not about fear, they are about power. When an experience relies on pressure, isolation, confusion, and exhaustion, consent becomes more complicated than a signature. And when the creator controls the rules, the footage, the narrative, and the finish line, the participant is never operating from an equal position. This is why McKamey Manor continues to hold attention even after years of controversy. It forces a question most haunted houses never have to answer. At what point does an attraction stop being a performance and start being something else? McKamey Manor is not just a haunted house story. It is a story about a persona, a system, and the way the internet can turn a niche experience into a national obsession, until officials are eventually forced to take a closer look. And if there is one reason this story refuses to die, it is this: fear fades. But the question of whether something was entertainment or exploitation tends to follow people long after the lights turn back on.